thank you for being here. We're going to make sure everybody gets in. We've got a record crowd this afternoon. We're so thankful to have you here. I think the number was going at 425 or a few more, so we thank you for coming to join us. My name is Charles Bone. I've been on the board of Cumberland Region Tomorrow since we started. I'm a lifelong resident of Sumner County. Clay Haynes and I were just comparing notes, and our families came to Sumner County somewhere in the 1780s. We haven't been run out of, well, I'm going to take that back. Some of our cousins have been run out of town or hung, but Clay and I have made it through. So we're proud of that, and proud to be a part of this region, proud to be a part of Cumberland Region Tomorrow, and especially thankful to have you here today. For those of you who've been here in the past, you know a little bit about what to expect, but this is the single largest event in the 10-county area that makes up the Cumberland region, that brings together leaders like all of you all from all over these 10 counties to specially focus on 6 issues of regional importance that we've identified and talk about. These 6 are up here, and by the way, again, some of you all know 4 years ago when we started this, they said, here, while you're talking, you can click and move the slides around on the PowerPoint. And I had to admit that that's just beyond my ability to point, click, and talk. And most people think I can't talk much anyway, so I'm going to really try to lean on Dustin Shane, who's our volunteer intern, who, if the slides go up wrong, it's my fault because I didn't say what I was supposed to say. So we're going to move through this and have a great afternoon. But all of you all know, and you can verbalize these issues in a lot of different ways, but Cumberland Region Tomorrow says these are the 6 critical areas where we need to be focused in terms of building this region for the next generation and the other generations to come after us. And those are transportation, transit, land use, quality growth, infrastructure, open space conservation, air, water quality and quantity, and economic competitiveness. Again, you can make the list as long as you want to make it, but we think those 6 issues really focus on where we are going and where we need to go as far as Cumberland Region Tomorrow is concerned and as far as our 10 counties are concerned. I want to thank you on behalf of our board. Our board is made up of leaders from throughout Middle Tennessee, from throughout the 10 counties. And I want to recognize the organizations that have collaborated to make this work. It's not just Cumberland Region Tomorrow. It's the Metropolitan Planning Organization and it's TDOT, who have been the primary focus of those works that have put this afternoon together. These are the convening sponsors, is what they're called, and they come together again this year to plan and help fund this event. In addition to those 3 organizations, this is really amazing because it's grown so over the last few years. There are 49 organizations in this region who signed on to sponsor or partner this event. And again, you'll remember in the past, we've had a few sponsors, partners, and we've been able to read them all. We decided this year, with having 49, we wouldn't try to do that. But I invite you, as you go through the afternoon and you see in your programs and the information and the online information, to acknowledge and show your appreciation to those 49 organizations that are sponsoring this. What I'd ask you to do is maybe give a round of applause to those 49 and to the 3 sponsors. Why are we here today? We got a little different approach this year than we've had in the past. The title, the theme this year of the regional summit is capitalizing on regional collaboration for economic competitiveness. That's a long title, but it says what we want to talk about today, how we work together as a region to make our economy more competitive in this world, not just in this state, not just in this southeast, and not just in this nation, but how we want to structure ourselves and work together to make our area better competitors for the good of our economy here. The Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, Ralph Schultz, is going to moderate the first panel and talk about why top national corporations are sold on and investing in Middle Tennessee. And he'll introduce these executives here in a few minutes. I think this is a great opportunity for us to hear their specific stories about why they're here. I noticed in shaking hands with them that they don't all have the same kind of Sumner County accent that I do. The Department of Agriculture, led by Julius Johnson, who's the former chair of Cumberland Region tomorrow, and Brad Smith, the Executive Chief of Staff with the Economic and Community Development Department of Tennessee, are going to next talk about the Jobs for Tennessee program and the regional efforts being made there. Next, Janet Miller of Partnership 2020 will moderate another panel on advancing our region, key regional issues for economic competitiveness. Again, with leaders from throughout the Middle Tennessee area, focusing on the role of Partnership 2020. So those of you who have heard that but don't really know about it, that'll be a real important discussion this afternoon about how we compete regionally, not with one another, but how we compete regionally. Then in our 3:20 to 5 o'clock program, Commissioner Shore of TDOT will be here. Most of you all know Commissioner Shore. He's the former mayor of Franklin, and he's going to be here to specifically talk about creating jobs and smarter transportation investments in Tennessee. Ed Cole, the Transit Alliance Executive Director, will then moderate a panel on the regional issues of transportation and transit. I had the opportunity I was telling some of them to speak at the Rotary Club in Lebanon yesterday on transit, and you never know exactly what kind of reaction you're going to get. And this one guy who about my age, maybe a little bit older, after I finished, stood up and said, well, why don't we just build a monorail right down the middle of the interstate, to get everybody back and forth from downtown Nashville? Good idea. The cost we'll talk about later this afternoon for some of the projects that we might consider to be advantageous. This year's summit will be a kickoff, and this is really interesting. This is new. A kickoff for the Tennessee Region's Sustainable Communities Roundtable. This is a statewide organization that's come together, I'd like to say, after modeling after Cumberland Region tomorrow. Some of them might not admit that in their hometowns of Jackson or Memphis or Knoxville or Chattanooga, but they've come together, funded by various foundations to say, let's build this beyond just the Cumberland region. Let's build this sustainable community model across the state. So you'll hear about that as well. We will then hear from Nashville Mayor Carl Dean. I'll talk more about him when we introduce him, but a call to action from Mayor Dean has been a traditional part of what we've done here at the summit. And then finally, we're going to recognize and celebrate some regional leaders who have made special contributions to the Cumberland region, and they'll be recognized at the end of the program. And after that, we're going to have an opportunity to fellowship and eat and drink and enjoy each other's company and discuss some of the things that we've been together for. So what I'd like to do now is invite Ralph Schultz to the podium. Really appreciate Ralph being here today. Especially you'll hear from his voice that he's suffering from a really tough early summer cold, and he's made a special effort to be here and join us. He's been doing this good work in Middle Tennessee for 30 years, since he's standing up right behind me and might breathe on me. I think I'll just give the microphone to Ralph Schultz and say, join me in welcoming a real great leader in this area for Tennessee.
Charles, thanks. I think maybe the best news anyone could have heard this morning was that my voice was completely gone and I wouldn't be moderating this panel. For those of you that know me, you know that that would have saved you some time and effort with regards to my comments. I think we ought to recognize Charles. He has been a consistent and a persistent leader on this regional theme for years, decades, decades, and decades. So, Charles. Okay, we're going to get right to it here. We have some outstanding panelists to talk about their specific circumstances, their industry circumstances, and their awareness and their understanding and observations about Middle Tennessee as an economic center. Economy is truly regional now. The Brookings Institution has created a body of information. In fact, other institutions have now created bodies of information that say economies aren't national in scope. National economies are an amalgamation of regional economies. And Nashville and this Middle Tennessee region plays a very significant, powerful, and positive role in that global economy. Recently, Brookings did an assessment of 200 global regional economies, and this Middle Tennessee region had moved from 167th 3 years ago on that list to 89th on that list. You have seen, if you compare the economic data, that the resurgence of the economy in this region is accelerated when compared to other regions in the country. You have seen us regularly listed in this area as a better than average source of entrepreneurship, one of the potential boom cities of the next 10 years, and a variety of statistics that underscore what we really kind of already know. This area is a prosperous area to be a part of. Now, this activity occurred by intention. This activity didn't occur by accident. In the late 80s, when the economy was struggling here, you look at two critical pieces of data. One, the cost of living, and the other, per capita income. And you find that our cost of living compared to the national average was 89% of the national average. You will find that the per capita income was at about that same level. But after 20 years of intentional economic growth, with cohesion throughout this regional economy, that cost of living has remained low at 88% of the national average, but the per capita income has grown to 109% of the national average. That has happened because of an in-migration of jobs, an in-migration of workforce, and the expansion of entrepreneurial businesses that are based in this area. So, we have great examples, great people here to represent those elements of our economy. We have the site manager for Hemlock Semiconductor Group, Terry Strange, not a stranger to many of you. Prior to his current assignment, Terry served as site manager and director for the largest integrated silicone production facility in the world, Dow Corning in China. With the wealth of his supply chain and site management experience, in early 2009, Terry was named site manager for the state-of-the-art polycrystalline silicon facility in Clarksville, Tennessee. Terry, welcome. Also joining us is the Vice President of Government Relations, Matt Gallivan, for Community Health Systems. Healthcare is the #1 industry in this region, and in many cases, we are the national leader in healthcare. And that growth of that industry was hatched here in the 60s, and it has continued to expand here over that time. Matt joined CHS in 2008 to lead the company's government relations activities on both the state and federal level. He brought with him more than 20 years of experience in the healthcare and government relations areas, and prior to joining CHS, Matt served as president of the Nashville Healthcare Council, leading the organization through 10 years of growth and influence and successfully implementing numerous education, communication, and economic development activities. So Matt, thank you for being here. And one of the great relocation and recruitment wins for this region, LP Building Products, and represented here by Chief Financial Officer Sally B. Bailey. Sally has been the Executive Vice President, Chief Financial Officer since December of 2011, and she previously served as Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Faro Corporation from 2007 to 2010, and previously was Senior Vice President, Finance and Controller of Timken Company. Sally, welcome as well. So Sally, can you lead us off here? Can you lead us by telling us a little bit about your company, your location, and maybe blend a little bit of what you've found attractive in this regional economy?
Sure. Well, thank you very much, and I'd first like to thank y'all for including LP today in this panel. It's really exciting to see what's happening through the Cumberland region tomorrow, and so thank you very much. LP Building Products is a manufacturer of engineered wood products, and so we manufacture things like OSB, I-joists, siding for homes. We had revenues last year of $1.4 billion, and we operate 25 mills. 15 are in the U.S., two in Chile, 1 in Brazil, and 6 in Canada. We moved our headquarters to Nashville in 2004. Prior to that, we were located in Portland, Oregon. And there are a lot of good reasons that we moved here. I think among them is that Nashville is really, or the Middle Tennessee area is really centrally located. So I talked about our mills, so imagine a map of the United States. I mean, so North America. So it's very easy for us to get to our mills we have mills on the West Coast in both the U.S. as well as in Canada. We have mills on the East Coast, in Maine and in Quebec. We have mills in the Southeast. We have mills in Alabama. We have mills in Texas. And so getting to those mills is a lot easier to do from Middle Tennessee than it is from the West Coast where we're previously located. In addition to Nashville being centrally located within the U.S., y'all have a great airport. So, you know, as somebody who travels a lot, I've been with LP now just 6 months. And in that time, I've traveled probably about 50% of the time. So I've gotten to know the people at the Nashville airport quite well. I have to tell you, one of my colleagues, Laura Proctor, travels so much that she actually knows the TSA agents and when they check in, along with some of the guys who check bags at the curbside. And for a business person of a global company, it's very important that you have an airport that is easy to get to and that also you have an airport that has more than one choice, so the airfares are moderately priced. So I don't know how many people there are in the room today that are familiar with the building industry, but we've had record low production or demand for the last 6 years. So it's really been we've not been in a recession, we've been in a depression. So as a consequence of that, having low airfares is really important, because for us to be good corporate leaders, we have to be able to get out and see our people, and you can only do that if you have an airport, and you have an airport that has more than one choice of airplane airfares or providers, and y'all have done a great job, because from what I can tell, virtually every single major airline, domestic airline in the country flies in and out of Nashville, and we can get very easily not just to our U.S. locations, but to our Canadian locations, to our Latin American locations, and just in April I was over in the U.K. and very easy flights. And I'm almost afraid to say this because I think it will jinx my next business trip, which is in a couple of weeks to New York, but so far I haven't even had any major delays. So somehow, I don't know that spring's coming, so maybe or I guess to me spring's coming because I have a Cuyahoga accent versus a southern accent, but Cuyahoga County, but it's really important to be able to easily get in and out of airports. I can't say that enough. Another aspect is, and again, I came from Ohio, so the taxes in Tennessee are really great. So, or that, shall I say, the lack of taxes in Tennessee are really great. And I think that was another reason why LP chose to relocate here, and it was certainly part of the reason why I chose to accept the offer that LP made. And just because I suspect most of the people here have spent much of their lives in Tennessee, I just would like to remind you of what it's like to live in a state that has taxes, so, and be employed in a state that has taxes. So when I lived in Cleveland Heights, so I worked in the city of Cleveland, I lived in the city of Cleveland Heights, so I paid Cleveland city taxes, I paid Cleveland Heights city taxes, I got the privilege of paying Ohio state taxes, I paid property, so then you're sort of probably thinking, okay, but we have high property taxes here. No, my property taxes are lower, we live in Davidson County, than they were when I lived in Cuyahoga County. So then you're thinking, okay, well, our sales tax is so high. Well, yes, the sales tax is high, but I was paying 7.75% sales tax in Ohio. So, I'd like to have the sales tax perhaps a little lower here in Tennessee, but that 2 percentage point difference isn't really as significant as the savings that we're getting on some of the other taxes that we pay. Which I guess leads to, you didn't ask for a strength, but I think a strength is you must have very efficient government here in Tennessee. So as a consequence, that's why our taxes are low, and that's great. So the last thing I'll say before we move on is, and I've heard this from not just other employees at LP, but other friends of mine that have relocated to Middle Tennessee. What was really great is that when LP came to talk to the people in Nashville, you all were very welcoming. And it was because you were welcoming, it made it very easy for the company to sort of recognize that moving people from Texas and moving people from Oregon to Nashville would be a relatively easy transition, because people are so friendly here and are so willing to help integrate people into the community. And that was important. And so don't underestimate the importance when you're wooing companies to Middle Tennessee of just being yourselves and being really, really friendly, because people remember that, and that helps make the decision for the leadership of companies to make the choice to move here, and that's, in fact, LP's been thrilled to be here, and it's been a great move for us.
Well, we're often recognized for being friendly, but we sort of forget that sometimes. So everybody just hug each other with your right now. Okay, I'm not seeing a whole lot of hugs. Rick, you can start it off back there. Just out of curiosity, how many people in the crowd have lived in states where there was an income tax? Okay. A lot of people have had that experience, one of them as well. So Matt, talk a little bit about healthcare. I know you're going to want to talk about the healthcare industry, but talk a little bit about CHS too, and why CHS remains planted in this Middle Tennessee area.
Okay, I thought that was question 3 or 4, but
Well, it can,
kick
but you
it
don't
off.
have to answer it.
we'll kick it off. Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Ralph and Charles. Appreciate the opportunity to be here as well and inviting CHS to participate. For those of you who are not familiar with Community Health Systems, we're one of the largest operators of acute care hospitals in the United States. In fact, the second largest publicly traded hospital company in the country, with HCA actually being number 1. Nashville is home to many of the largest hospital companies in the country. CHS is headquartered in Franklin, and we have about 2,900 employees and contractors in Williamson County, and which also makes us the largest employer in Williamson County. And CHS owns and operates 134 hospitals in 29 states. We have revenues last year of approximately $13.6 billion. We've got 90,000 employees across the U.S. And approximately 20,000 licensed beds in total. And about, and this is a back of the envelope calculation, but about 1.8% of all hospital admissions in the United States are into CHS affiliated hospitals. So we're very proud of the role we play in the communities we're in and the quality we provide and the efficiencies we generate. I would add that most of our hospitals are rural and small urban hospitals. And would add that our hospitals are actually the sole provider of essential healthcare services in 55% of the communities we operate in. And just from an economic development perspective, because many of you all are in some of those communities that we're in as well as others, we actually have 11 hospitals in Tennessee and 5,000 employees that work at those 11 hospitals. But I think it's important just to remember from your perspective that hospitals, particularly rural hospitals, are typically the largest employers in their communities and play a key role. And these are good, relatively high-paying jobs for those communities. And the hospitals are often the sort of central player in the community. People go to Sunday brunches at hospitals in some of these smaller communities we're in and the like. And as an investor-owned healthcare system, we also pay taxes in the communities we're in, state, local, state, federal taxes. Why Community Health Systems is here? Oh yeah, well, healthcare industry cluster, which is really probably the driving reason why we're here. Nashville is home, and it dates back, as Ralph mentioned, to the 60s, largely to the Frist family and others. But Nashville is home to the premier healthcare industry cluster in the United States. It's estimated by the Nashville Healthcare Council there are more than 250 companies based here, healthcare companies based here that operate on a multi-state, national, and international basis. 19 of those hospitals, or 19 of those companies at last count, were publicly traded with revenues of approximately $60 billion. With about 400,000 jobs around the country. As I remember it, I think 7 of Nashville's largest hospital companies account for 360,000 jobs around the country at their various facilities. So major employer on the national level. So it's really an industry that is national in scope. And then also you have more than 300 professional services firms such as accounting, architecture, banking, legal, and the like that have expertise in healthcare and that support the industry here and that have grown up around that healthcare industry cluster. So you really have 3 key elements for driving a healthcare industry cluster. You've got the healthcare management expertise, again, dating back to the late 1960s with the real start of the investor-owned hospital system here. You've got the professional services support. I see a number of law firms and others represented here. And you've got available capital. I mean, it's amazing many companies have spoken about the halo effect. Startup companies will talk about the halo effect that they have as a result of being based in Nashville and being able to attract capital for their healthcare companies. And as many of you all know, it's not just capital from local investors, but from all over the country and all over the world. Their regular representatives are flying in and out of Nashville. And certainly all this is very attractive to community health systems. You've got great healthcare management expertise to draw upon. It's a very collegial healthcare community. Our executives are talking all the time. You go have dinner at F. Scott's one night, you might see 3 of the top hospital CEOs in the country. It's a great environment. we talk together all the time on issues affecting our companies and what we need to do on some of the issues in Washington. So just a very supportive collegial environment and just bottom line, a very entrepreneurial one. And with that, I'll stop and we'll go from there.
So what other restaurants will you see those top? I'll bet they're all over the region.
They are.
So Terry, Hemlock has brought a new industry to Tennessee, an industry that hadn't existed here before. So talk a little bit about Hemlock and a little bit about why here.
All right. Hemlock Semiconductor is a Michigan-based company. In fact, we first started Hemlock Semiconductor about 51 years ago in a small town called Hemlock, because quite often people ask, how did you get the name of Hemlock? Is it the tree or the drink? It's really a town. The town is just a few hundred people, and actually the plant was built out in the middle of a bean field. They raised beans there instead of corn. And it was built in that region because there were no railroads. So at that point in time, the technology was such that if there was a railroad within 1 or 2 miles of the facility, it would destroy the crystals, because they were making polycrystalline silicon at that point in time almost entirely for this new electronics industry. If you have a cell phone, or you have a laptop or another computer, or if you have some programmable device maybe next to your bed where you program the alarm clock, you have a coffee maker, anything that's programmable, it has a silicon chip in it. About 1/3 of all the devices that are out in the world come from Hemlock Semiconductor's silicon. Now, the silicon industry for semiconductor grade silicon was growing at about a rate of 5, 6, 7% on an annual basis. And then around 2004, 2005, this breakthrough happened where they started using this rigid material, also a type of silicon, very similar to the semiconductor grade for solar panels. And that industry, when it took off, started growing at 30 to 40% per year. Now, early on, we were making about 10% solar grade silicon, which, by the way, just happened to be off-spec semiconductor grade, because if you had a material that wasn't quite to the 99 with 9 nines behind it percent pure, it only had 8 nines after it, then it became solar material. And today that's grown to so more than 80% of what we make is solar material. And so within about 6 to 7 years, we've invested a little over $5 billion in our Michigan facility to grow the ability to make predominantly solar grade silicon. Now, Hemlock Semiconductor started off just as a subsidiary of the Dow Corning Corporation. And I've spent most of my career with Dow Corning. In fact, I was just thinking a few minutes ago, 2 days from now is my 37th anniversary. So all except the last 3 have been within Dow Corning. And I knew very little, actually, about what Hemlock Semiconductor did during those 34 years. But we wound up making this material, and we are wholly owned not by Dow Corning these days, but by 3 companies. And 2 of those are really financial partners that are Japanese. It's Mitsubishi Materials and Shin-Etsu Hondatai. They were customers, and they wanted to make sure that they had their financial interest and their product interests sustained, so they bought into the company as financial partners. They don't get involved with expansions or really large decisions, but they're just involved with the financial end of things. So come around 2006, 7, the industry is growing like crazy, and the company decided they really wanted to expand, but they were getting a little bit worried that putting all their eggs in one basket within Michigan. So they began to look. And we wound up here. And I can share a little bit more of that later.
As you arrived here, did you have that same friendly experience that Sally mentioned earlier?
I can tell basically the same story about the friendly. There were a few reasons. Actually, when we had an internal team, we didn't get a third party to look for a site for us. And this internal team was made up of about 15 people, and they traveled to 5 continents to 60 different sites on those 5 continents. And it's a bit amazing. I grew up in middle Kentucky. and I'm not a Michigander, and I sort of bristle when somebody calls me from Michigan. But to think out of all over the world, and I've lived all over the world, that we would come to a small town, relatively small town of Clarksville, Tennessee, to put in this major chemical site of $1.2 billion. It blows my mind. And so I did ask, why are we here? I was thrilled because I was in China and I got to come home. But why are we here? And there were a variety of reasons. One of the first things that came out of their mouths was, those people are just friendly. I said, you know, we're friendly in Michigan, but not like that. It's just different. They also found that working with the local economic development and the state economic folks, that there was a professionalism that they didn't find other places. That they would keep a confidence, because quite often when you're out looking for something, you don't want people to know what you're looking at and for one site to know they're competing against another site. And they kept those confidences very well. We found that the state was really interested. They court you, they offer you some incentives, but those weren't necessarily the main things. We're technology geeks of sorts, and we want to make sure that we've got the resources, the energy, the water, all the things it takes, and the people. And we found that here in Tennessee. We also had a need for some of those resources to be trained. So we found that the state, along with the TBR, along with Austin Peay State University, were very willing to partner with us. In fact, they built a building, they put in a new curriculum, and they're training people to be able to work in our facilities so that we have the right types of skills that we need to do that. And I understand from talking to President Hall that for a 4-year university to put in a program that's a 2-year curriculum wasn't necessarily an easy hurdle to overcome. So it's not like it was a slam dunk and everybody was always on top of this. There was a good bit of work, and people went to work to try to make life good for us as we moved into Tennessee. One of the large selling points also was working with TVA in the multi-states, but particularly Tennessee, with the megasites that were established here in Tennessee. We've moved on to one of those megasites. And that meant that a lot of the work had been done up front, so that as we came in here, we've estimated it reduced about 1/3 of the cost and 1/3 of the time it would take to do a relocation to some new place around the world. That's a significant cost savings and just benefit to a company like ours. When you look at the people resources, where do you find better people than here in the Mid-South? They're just good, quality people. They're honest. They want to do a day's work for a day's pay. They're willing to learn. And, I mean, that's basically what you want. Up around Clarksville, it's probably historically been more of an agricultural area. I worked in our Carrollton, Kentucky facility for Dow Corning for many years. It's very similar. And if you need somebody to do maintenance, you don't always need a journey person, because you can go out and you can find some young man or woman who's grown up on the farm. They know how to tear down a tractor. They know how to fix the plows. They know how to do mechanical work. They got the basics of welding. They know lots of things that you need just to be able to maintain a chemical plant. So the resources are here as far as the people. We did want a bit more skill in some of the trades, because some of them are very specific in what we do, and we've had to go out and make sure we get some of that training done. But by and large, the people are here to meet our needs. And I am repeatedly, people come down from our Michigan facility to work with us, to help us on some specific thing, and they just stop by my office and say, people here are different. So it's not just friendly, it's just the whole welcoming aspect, and they're not just smiling and happy, but they will do things for you and they don't even know you. And that's just a different environment than you find in a lot of parts of this country. I think it's enough for now.
Matt, you probably aren't looking for welders in your field, but what kind of workforce characteristics does this region have that, from your perspective, are part of its strength and part of its weakness when you look at your industry? And Sally, I'll ask you the same thing.
Yeah, and I briefly, yeah, thank you, Terry. Nicely done, by the way. Yeah, when you look at the workforce piece, and I briefly touched upon that, is clearly one of the draws here is the healthcare just management expertise, which there's always a lot of churn in companies. It's a very entrepreneurial environment, so a lot of companies get bought and sold, which puts people out on the street with a little extra money in their pockets. They create new companies, but at the same time, it makes other employees available. So just the depth of the healthcare management expertise is really important to us. For us right now, I know one of our major concerns, or not really major concerns, just a big area for us is the IT side, information technology. For healthcare, there's a lot of pressure on hospitals, a lot of incentives, a lot of penalties built into Medicare and other types of payment programs to adopt what they're terming as electronic health records, and it's going to be a long road. But the federal government has created what's known as meaningful use incentives or incentive policies that are intended to move hospital companies or hospitals slowly but surely to electronic health records. And that literally is going to take 3 to 6 years from an industry perspective to install a tremendous amount of technology in every hospital around the country. And if you don't do it, you're going to face severe penalties on your Medicare payments. So I know that ourselves as well as other cohorts in the industry, counterparts in the industry, are really looking for the IT skills that are out there. But as we've grown our business, we've been able to bring more and more services that typically we might have outsourced into our headquarters or into our system and done those activities in-house. In such areas as, say, physician billing company, we now have 200 jobs in our headquarters devoted to handling physician billing that used to be spread out across vendors around the country. And then also we have a collection agency in-house that we used to outsource those types of activities. So as we continue to grow and bring in operations, those who know community health systems are one of our strengths, certainly, both as from Wall Street's perspective as well as an operator, is we have a very standardized, centralized platform that we try to operate off of. So being able to bring those types of services in-house as we grow, as we buy new hospitals, and as utilization actually continues to grow as a result of the aging population, you've got those types of aspects at play too.
Sally?
Sure. We have 200 employees here, and it's primarily the administrative office, chief corporate office. So, we have our general management, we have purchasing, logistics, the finance organization, HR, some IT, sales, marketing, communication, some inside sales, some customer service. And so there's sort of the general management arena. And as we've brought some other, we've consolidated some of our outside sales offices outside the Nashville area into Nashville from the Carolinas. I'm moving 4 jobs from finance jobs and accounting jobs from Hayden Lake, Idaho to Nashville. And, as we look at as I experience finding people here relative to other places that I've lived, whether it's, Houston or Cleveland, because of Matt's area of expertise, area of business where there are a lot of people who know healthcare really, really well, I find that there are fewer people who have the kind of manufacturing experience that I'm used to seeing, particularly in the North, which has really been more the heart of manufacturing. And so, the reason that's important is that if you want to be able within a company like LP to talk with the operations guys or the sales guys, you really sort of have to understand how plants work. And if you worked in healthcare, it's a little hard hospitals work quite differently than an OSB mill. And so that's a training that you have to do, is to help people understand cost accounting and manufacturing in our environment, And so hopefully y'all will figure out a way to get more manufacturers to move to Tennessee, you know, so that we can get a larger pool of employees to come into these even, you know, these high-level jobs. Because even in high-level jobs, you have to understand the flow of the product. And, but that being said, I think we've been quite pleased with the pool of candidates that we've been able to draw here, and like anything else, it may take some time to find the right person, but we in fact have been able to find the right people. And you know, fortunately for me, when LP went looking for a CFO, they didn't find somebody in your pool here, but that meant a great opportunity for me to come move here. So I'll have to, so thank you for not having somebody for my job.
Well, Sally, by the way, we'll work on bringing those manufacturers here together.
I'd love to help you.
We'll all, it's one of the great things that blesses this region is great leadership from the business community and elected community. A couple of quick questions, and then we'll see if there's an opportunity for a question from our audience. And these aren't necessarily questions that we said we were going to ask when we rehearsed the panel. Just in case, just if you were looking. When you look at this entire region and your business in the context of that entire region, what do you see in this region as the things that need to be improved if this region is going to be a part of your expansion? And what are the things you see as strong that are going to encourage you to plant your expansion here, whether it's in your present location or some other location in the region? Strengths and weaknesses.
One of the areas where we've struggled some is in the quality of the construction workforce that we've been able to attract to do the jobs for us. I can give you several stories where the quality of what they've done is just inferior to what we might see in other regions within the U.S. or even internationally. And I think part of that is because of a lack of pride that they might have. Sometimes, for instance, we get, with the hyper-pure material we make, we have to keep everything clean as we build it. So our pipes would show up with flanges welded on them, full of nitrogen so that they don't rust, and little sticky covers over the end of the flanges so that they stay clean. Some of the contractors didn't bother to take the sticky covers off when they put the pipe together, which means you can't flow anything through that pipe. So we've had to go back and dismantle about 10,000 flanges. And it's just, I mean, those are not big things, but it's a quality type thing. So I think helping our construction industry to understand if you're going to have an industry such as ours, where it's a very exacting thing, a very hyper-pure environment, it's a little different than just throwing something there if you're going to pump sewage water or something to it. It's just different. So I would say that's a weakness that we have in this region in terms of the quality of the workforce. But by and large, if you look at all the concrete, the piping, the steel, the site has gone up rapidly, it's gone up well, and well over 90% of the stuff has gone really well. It's just we're a little bit unique, and we need some special care.
Matt?
Yeah, in terms of strengths, and these have kind of been said tangentially, but I think one thing to step back and just highlight is just the quality in terms of attracting people here, and one of the real strengths in wanting to grow here is the quality of life in the area. You've got just an incredible number of activities. Just in the 15 years or so that I've been here, we've attracted 2 professional sports teams. We've got a new symphony. We've got a world-class museum, and any number of sports and outdoor activities that anybody would want to participate in are available out there. So the quality of life is fantastic, and overall, great schools to be able to either attract employees to or to keep people here with. In terms of weaknesses, I think like other communities our size and growing, and as the chamber is well focused on, and I'm sure we'll be very focused on over the coming year with my CEO working with Ralph as chairman of the chamber, you've got the transportation issues. I'm not saying there's any problems there yet that I've noticed, but I mean, if you drive through Cool Springs where our headquarters is, it reminds you of a growth boom in China when you see all the derricks and everything that are up there, building some of the larger buildings. And you know, just again, a need to remain focused on some of those issues related to growth. And transportation, infrastructure, education, and public safety. And I know there's a lot of discussions going on now on all of those issues. And I think our elected officials and others, together with the Nashville chambers and leadership such as your all's, are doing a good job of trying to take these on a long-term basis and from a balanced perspective.
Sally?
Well, I'll add one strength, and I think that we maybe haven't talked about today in terms of a strength, but the quality of healthcare that's provided in this community is really fantastic. And you know, that's important to employers and employees when they decide to relocate. And so it's a real tribute to this area and to Matt and his industry that we have such a high quality of efficiently cost healthcare. From a weakest standpoint, you know, the only thing I'd add is, you know, Middle Tennessee does have a bit of a reputation of perhaps being a tad homogeneous, and while I understand that the statistics may not support that, it is sort of the reputation. It's something that I think, as you all are considering, wanting to bring more people here to make sure that you're embracing diversity, and so as part of the welcoming of companies and being the friendliness, I mean, it has to be clear, and I know the Chamber's worked a lot on this, that Middle Tennessee is not just willing to be a diverse community, but is a diverse community, and I think it's important to get that message out.
Well, Sally, gracias. Thank you for that comment. I know merci too, but that's it. Do you want time? The time is up, so I hope you didn't have a question. I'd just like to conclude this one thought. The one thought is this: the U.S. Chamber recently identified Tennessee as the business-friendliest state in the country, and the Middle Tennessee region represents 31.7% of the GDP from across the state. When you take a cost of living that's 88% of the national average and a per capita income of 109% of the national average, you're creating prosperity for a group of people that now have choices on how to spend their money for education, their own businesses, homes, etc. That spread fuels this economy. The jobs that are created by these people and brought here by these people are an important basis for that prosperity. So thanks to you all for your investment in this region. And we're...
Well done.